Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Grafton Select Board meeting for April 20th, 2021. Just as a preliminary matter, my name is Peter Carlson. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting for the Grafton Select Board. Please permit me to confirm that all members anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. So for Select Board members, would I please call your name? Please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often here.
Mr. Prisby?
Prisby, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy here.
Peter Carlson here. And then, if applicable, other members who are intended to be on this agenda tonight, please, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Miss Julie Feeney,
Here.
Mr. Amar Clark,
I'm here.
and Eric Schreier.
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay. Let me just go back here. Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Town of Grafton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend all public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order, which you can find posted on the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment for any public hearings tonight. For the meeting, the select board is convened on Zoom because posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are attending and participating by video conference. Be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording and viewed by others later. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website when final minutes are posted, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I, the chair, will note otherwise. Before we turn to our first item on the agenda, please permit me to cover some ground rules so we can have clear conduct business tonight. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of select board members, inviting each of you to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And finally, if there's any vote that to be taken tonight by the board, it will be conducted by roll call. All right, I just have a couple of announcements that I've been asked to give. Bear with me here for a moment. I have dog duty tonight, so she was chewing on the crate. I apologize for that delay. Brush Dump. Brush Dump is open during the week from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, weather permitting. It is also open on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. weather permitting. Grafton Cleanup Day. Due to COVID, the Grafton Garden Club will not be holding their annual plant sale on Grafton Cleanup Day. However, as it did last year, the town will sponsor an abbreviated cleanup day. Bags will be available outside the Municipal Center and have been starting as of today, and they will be available all week. Please do not create teams. Once trash is collected, please contact the Grafton Highway Department to report where the bags have been left. Town meeting will be held on June 5th at 11 a.m. at the Grafton High School athletic field. The rain date for June 5th will be June 6th at 11 a.m. Please note that the local election date has been moved to Saturday, May 22nd. Polls will be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Polling locations remain the same. On May 1st, the recycling center currently housed at the Highway Garage at 27 Upton Street will be moving to the new DPW facility located at 64 Old Westboro Road. With the change in location comes a change in operating hours. Beginning May 1st, the new recycling center schedule will be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Also, for the remainder of April, the operating hours are Saturday, April 17th and 24th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the existing 27 Upton Street. Please note that they will be putting a sign up at the 27 Upton Street, letting people know of the new location. Last but not least, just for the board member reminder and for the public, Mr. Broussard is attending an Economic Development Committee meeting for a short while. He will be joining us partway through our meeting when he concludes his remarks in business with economic development. So before we turn to our first item on the agenda, do we have anybody for the public for any public comments? I am not seeing anyone come in for that. Okay. Moving on to our first scheduled business. Tonight, we have a citizen's petition here. We have Ms. Julie Feeney here, as well as Amar Clark, to discuss their petition and just have a question and answer session with the select board and give you an opportunity to discuss what you're proposing at town meeting. Ms. Feeney, I would like to yield the floor over to you if you'd like to just introduce who you are and what you're presenting.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us tonight. So my name is Julie Feeney. I'm a newer Grafton resident. I've been here now 2 years, which has flown by. I am representing the group Grafton Rise, and it stands for Racial Inclusion and Social Equity. So it started, believe it or not, during COVID. So most of us haven't actually met in person, which is pretty, I think, amazing. And it started last year around this time, mostly in June, around the wake of the George Floyd murder. So it's especially poignant, I think, tonight for us to be meeting with all of you. And we have a number of projects that we work on. We have currently 360 something members to the Facebook group, and a smaller admin team, which is, I think, around 10 to 12 members. Amar, correct me if I'm wrong. Myself and Amar are members of the admin team. And so we had a member speak to us, and we present the idea of promoting a welcoming and inclusive Grafton through the idea of amending the calendar to do such. And so that is the history behind why we brought this idea. And we are really just looking, hopefully, for collaboration. And, a lot of us, especially myself, are new to this process. So we welcome any suggestions or ideas, as well as to how to make it the strongest petition that we can. Amar, can you please
Yeah.
add what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through what exactly is in the warrant article. So basically, there are 3 items that are being asked for inside this warrant article. And I'm going to list them sort of in order of priority. So the first one is we would like for the Columbus Day, the traditional Columbus Day holiday, to be renamed or rebranded as an Indigenous Peoples Day. This is in recognition of the fact that our town exists on Nipmuc land, and we do have, an active tribe that still inhabits our town. We thought that the timing on this was pretty good to bring it up at town meeting right now because of some of the things that we've been doing recently in town around the high school mascot. When those discussions were happening around town, we heard a lot of opinions of people that had pride in our historical connection to the Indigenous people that live here. And we think that this is a good way to acknowledge and honor the connection that our community has to the Native Americans. Right now, so we wouldn't be the first ones to do this. There's at least 14 states in the Union that celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And on the East Coast, Maine also celebrates the holiday. There's a number of communities within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that also celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. I can list them off, but I don't think that it's super important. We'd like to see Grafton join the ranks of these other towns as a leader in some of these kind of progressive policies and naming of holidays. And we think that this is a great follow-up to the mascot decision that we made, was it last year, I believe. We can do this warrant, this item at basically no cost to the town. It's just a renaming of an existing holiday that we already have on the town calendar. So that is the Columbus Day item. The second item that is inside of the article is establishing June 19th as a town holiday for Juneteenth. This has been adopted by the state of Massachusetts as a state holiday. This year it happens to fall on a Saturday. I'm not sure exactly what happens when it falls on a weekday. I don't think that, so this year, because it falls on a Saturday, there is not a day off for state employees. I believe next year there is actually a Monday public holiday for it that's on the state calendar. So basically, we wanted to establish this as a kind of day when people can reflect on the meaning of Juneteenth and some of our history around our treatment of Native Americans and the African American heritage that, and African Americans and our African American heritage in this country. We do understand that if we are to add a new holiday to the town's calendar, potentially there's some cost involved with that. We've been in contact with the town administrator, and we are currently waiting on an analysis of what this could potentially cost the town. And the third item that's on the warrant is basically taking a day, a traditional day off, which is the day after Thanksgiving, and making that designated as Native American Heritage Day or Day of Mourning. And this particular item is interesting because we've had a number of conversations with some folks in the Native American community, both in town and out of town, following as a follow-up to this warrant article to discuss the various aspects of it. And I guess Native American Heritage Day or Day of Mourning is a little bit of a controversial issue within the Native American community, whether that should even be something that's celebrated. So we wanted to get the board's opinion on if there's possibly a mechanism for us to amend the article to change that. So we think that these holidays represent an opportunity to honor our past and our national history that has been neglected. And we think that this warrant article reflects our desire as a town to do better and to be an example to other towns in the Commonwealth. And I'll leave it there. Thanks. Yeah.
I'll wait to be recognized.
I'm so sorry. I'm talking away, and I'm like, who wants to ask a question? All right, sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Feeney and Mr. Clark, for coming in and presenting your citizen's position. Did any of the board members have any questions or would like to comment first? Mr. Often.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. The first is on, well, maybe 3 comments. I think it's a great follow-on to the renaming of the mascot. There's a lot of work to do, right? Beyond some of the surface level stuff. And I think even talking about, renaming Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day is that's a kind of a surface level thing. And I think there's some additional conversations that need to go on to represent some of the work to really, what does that mean? So we're changing the name, but then what is potentially going to happen in the schools in terms of educational opportunities? So, I like the idea of it. I think there's some additional work that needs to be done. On the second one, as far as Juneteenth, I would definitely probably connect with the school committee to get their opinion on the change of calendar. They would potentially I think they're in contract negotiations now, so that would represent a contract change for them. Juneteenth falls at the end of the school calendar, which might present some challenges for them. So I would be prepared when you're in discussions at town meeting to answer the question about the school calendar and what that might mean, as well as the cost issue that you had mentioned. The third thing that I would say is because this is sort of presents a number of different discussions, I would definitely be prepared at town meeting floor with a couple of different written versions of amendments that you think are likely to be acceptable, because that's one of the requirements. So if you just have those in hand ready to go, then as that discussion plays out, you can be prepared with written versions of amendments in hand, and that's really going to be the way that you'll make an amendment, is on town meeting floor during discussion. You'll propose an amendment to the warrant article.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Often. Ms. Roy?
So I just wanted to offer another avenue for amending this. This actually happened to me last year with my citizens petition. I forgot one word that needed to be changed, but it's a more difficult avenue. You have to rewrite your citizens petition and collect all the signatures again. So I don't know how difficult it was for you guys to collect these signatures, but if it was easy enough to do, that's another alternative where you can just bring the best version of what you'd like to see. That's just something you can do. And I know it's been done recently, although I don't know if you necessarily have to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fazio.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for proposing this to our community and bringing this to town meeting. And I wanted to know, it's a Facebook group, I think is what you said, Julie, right? So if people wanted more information or to get involved, they go to Grafton Rise on Facebook?
That's correct.
Okay, just because it would be good for people to get more information and ask questions before town meeting as well.
Sure.
Yeah, and we have a website at graftonrise.com also.
Great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fazio. Mr. Often, Mr. Prisby, sorry.
I have one question, and then based on the answer, probably a couple follow-up questions. And my one basic question to you guys is, are you ready? I mean, are you ready? Like, no joke. We just did the Grafton Indian, and as I bet Amar and Julie are both aware, there was then a follow-up Facebook post with something along the lines of 5 million comments that happened months after the actual decision was made, that took up everybody's time that participated, and was from beginning to end a complete waste of everybody's time because nobody's mind was changed, nobody was educated, and ultimately the issue at hand was not determined because it had already been determined. So you're tackling something like this again, and I guess my question is, when I say are you ready for the blowback? Are you ready to engage a community that includes people who are kind of predetermined not to hear your message? Are you ready to deal with a populace who is going to assume that because you're changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, that means that they're racist? Are you ready to deal with that? And I kind of want to know how you're going to deal with it, because, you know, we can all pat you on the back and send you on your way and say good luck, but I think you're going to want more than that. I think if we tacitly support this and say welcome to the warrant, that we are going to not only be responsible for answering questions about what this is about, but kind of be responsible for being able to articulate what it is that you're looking to achieve here. So can you guys describe what it is you're looking to achieve just by doing this? We know you're not going to cure racism in the community by doing this, but why do this now?
So I don't think that we're necessarily trying to change hearts and minds here. I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to expose what we believe is a Grafton that wants to do better on some of these issues, right? I mean, there's so many people, and you know, I'm on a lot of the Grafton Facebook groups, and I see, you know, a lot of this kind of mudslinging behavior that we see on there. You know, our group is just trying to drive inclusion and make sure that everybody in town has a voice, right? And we understand that there's another side to that, right? I mean, the Christopher Columbus was Italian, and there's some Italian heritage and pride there, right? There's I believe October is Italian Heritage Month. So there's a time to celebrate Italian heritage. We believe that you know, dedicating a day to Indigenous people is a better representation of what Grafton and our community is about. You know, and then we're going to put this to a vote, and you know, if it passes, it passes, and if it doesn't, then you know, at least we tried. Yes, we understand that there's going to be blowback. There's going to be people that are going to say very mean and nasty things about this effort. And I think that we're prepared for that. We have been working with with a person out of a group in Wellesley. Is it Wellesley, Julie?
World of Wellesley that
Yeah.
started an Indigenous Peoples Day committee as an offshoot. So I guess the good, the bad, and the ugly is that we're not the first town to do it. We definitely have heard stories from them about things that they experienced. I hear your questions, and they're definitely concerns that I have for my family as well. I mean, things got pretty scary, but I can also say one of the proud things that we've done with Grafton Rise is for almost a year we had standouts, and a lot of people drove by and were honking and great and brought us coffees. And then we had some people drive by and say things with my infant son that I would never want said to anybody's infant son. Gestures, things, and we stood there for almost a year. And so I think, there are definite concerns we recognize, especially coming off the national election that was so contentious that people have dug their heels into whatever issue for whatever reason. And it's really hard, to make what's essentially a moral argument and make people budge. I mean, it is right now just because we're coming off of that. And are we ready? I don't know, but I don't know that, given all of those factors that we'll ever be ready. I think I'm very impressed that we're able to do so much given the fact that our group came together essentially during a pandemic and that we haven't even been able to meet in person. I think, we're going to do the best that we can. I think my personal goal is to stay off social media unless I absolutely have to be, just because with the comments there isn't a lot that gets changed, unfortunately. But I do think it's a worthy thing for us to attempt. I think we were so excited to move to Grafton, and the friends that I've made from Grafton Rise are the people that I want my toddler to grow up around. And this, I feel like there's kind of the old school Grafton, and then there's a lot of new people moving in. And whenever that happens, you see a lot of contention. And not that everybody who's lived here for a long time feels necessarily that way, but a lot of people do. And I feel like we're seeing kind of a sea change in Grafton, and I think it's a moment of opportunity to take advantage of, in my opinion. But I definitely hear your comments, and again, welcome your advices to somebody who has been a public figure and I know is not a stranger to controversy.
If I can just follow up really quickly, I like the way that you guys framed the Indigenous Peoples Day, coinciding with our heritage with the Nipmuc tribe in Grafton. I think and this is hard, and again, positive frames, I suppose people would advise you are always better, but you're not just advocating to add Indigenous Peoples Day, you're advocating to replace something. And at some point, someone's going to ask you, okay, well, why can't it be both? And I suspect that wouldn't be good enough for what you're looking for, because there are issues with the legend of Christopher Columbus. And I can say this as an Italian American. I, for one, am not particularly affected one way or another by Christopher Columbus. I'm perfectly secure in my own heritage. But that's not going to be the case for everybody. And I guess I'm preaching to the choir here, and you know what you're up against, but it's going to be a lot of you're erasing history. It's going to be a lot of, why do you have to put a Band-Aid on this? Why do you have to make everybody feel secure in this? Sometimes life is tough, etc. And I guess if I were to give you one bit of advice, it would be to just reframe the argument on history. We're not rewriting history. History has always been written from the point of view of the winners. And for the first time in living memory, we have a growing group of people, a plurality, if not a majority, who are starting to question whether or not history shouldn't be considered from the point of view of the losers. And the losers in the Christopher Columbus story certainly are the Native Americans who lived on Hispaniola, and the Taínos who were taken abroad in the dawn of the slave trade. Okay, that's a part that needs to be discussed, and these are facts. That's not changing history, that is recording history accurately. And I think that would be the place that I would come from here. Maybe you change some minds with that, maybe you don't. I suspect it's going to be an identity thing with people. Politics has become like sports. You root for the laundry. This is my team, this is my hat today, and this is who I root for. And And that's a sad fact. But, you know, to the extent that there are people in the middle who might be undecided, who might take your message the wrong way, I think you got to address, you know, the reason why you're not only adding something to the calendar, but making a change. And also just, you know, to echo Matt's comments, it's a funny thing to consider holidays with a dollar figure attached to them, but it really is, you know.
Yeah.
We're paying for people to work around here. And, you know, the more days that you give them off, the more of a wrinkle that it throws into the larger economic picture. But, you know, we'll leave that to people like Evan to sort out. Hi, Evan.
Evan, welcome, Evan. Thank you, Mr. Brisby. I have a couple of statements I want to make. You know, first of all, you know, I see this as a citizen's position to change the personnel bylaw. That's all it's doing. It's not, to your point, it's not erasing history. It's not doing that. It's changing the personnel bylaw. So in other words, town employees and what they have listed as for holidays is what this petition is basically asking to change. So it's not changing your calendar at home. It's not changing what you want to believe in at home or anything like that. This has to deal with town employees and its bylaw. Its bylaw does not go beyond the employment of the town of Grafton, right? I do have one question, and I have no problem. I mean, if the town wants to change what they call Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, if that's the wish, I'm fine with it. I really am, and I'm one of those people that, you know, Mr. Prisby refers to. I'm ingrained in this community my whole life, but you know, times change, things change, and I'm open to that. And if it's the will of the people, then I'm fully supported behind it. I have no problem with the bylaw change, to be honest with you, especially for the personnel. I do have one question though about adding a holiday, okay, to our personnel bylaw. I think that has some implications that I feel as a select board member, I'm going to raise some concern with, and that is adding the potential day off. And then how does the town pay for that? I think that that's a different discussion. And that's where I'm kind of caught up in what you're asking for here in the change of this bylaw to consider. And whether or not, what implications does that have for us budgeting and for personnel going forward? I know Mr. Broussard just came here and you've been working with our TA on this. I want the analysis. Like, what is adding a holiday going to cost the town of Grafton? Mr. Broussard?
$22,000.
Okay. So
So,
$22,000. I was just going to say, so $22,000 for adding Juneteenth, correct? That additional.
Well, so it depends on how you frame whether you're basically you're losing $22,000 of human capital, right? Because you've already budgeted to pay those people, whether they work that day or don't work that day. You're simply losing their work product for that one day. So it costs us $22,000 a day to pay people out for that holiday, in which you don't get a work product.
I guess my follow-up to that one question, Ms. Roy, is like, does the Article 20 personnel bylaw affect all employees of Grafton, or does it only affect those in the municipal centers? I mean, we talking school systems here. Like, what is how far-reaching do our bylaws go?
It's my understanding that the school committee is not governed by that personnel bylaw document. That's how I'm reading it, unless Ed, you disagree.
I don't, and I think I might be a little bit confused, but I think that Juneteenth is a state holiday now.
Yes. But it's not on the town calendar.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a local option.
It is correct.
All right.
Okay.
So if I may, that's been a big discussion around the town administrator kind of listservs, has been Juneteenth and whether or not we have to observe it and have to pay people for that day off. And so it comes down to, it is a local option. And you know, we can do with it what we will.
Thank you. Ms. Roy, you had your hand up.
So I have a couple more questions now. That $22,000 figure, is that just for Juneteenth, or does that include the day after Thanksgiving that they were trying to do as well?
So it's, I didn't do anything, it's not holiday specific. So if you give everyone the day off, or our payroll, our lost work product is $22,000. So you're going to have first responders on, dispatchers still have to work. You have to calculate what their time and a half is, or double time, or whatever that is. So basically how we came to this number is we went to President's Day and looked at our payroll. Because it really doesn't matter what the holiday is. So if you want to know what a half a day is, it's $11,000 of missed work product. It's all comes down to human capital, because you're going to budget for it whether they're working or not working.
So my other question is, and I don't know, one, if they would want to do this, or two, if it's even possible, but on the citizens petition that they've created so far, there is at least one of the holidays that they would like to amend and walk back. So that just leaves renaming Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day and taking on the local option of Juneteenth. Is there any way to separate that into just two separate motions for them so that it doesn't get as messy as it potentially could?
Mr. Chair, can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Broussard.
So this citizen petition falls under Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10, which is the citizen petition section of MGL. We can only do with it what the petition is submitted to and certified. So those people that signed it as it's written. That's how it goes on to the warrant. We do not have the ability to change it. Now, the petitioner could, in theory, go change what they've submitted and get people to sign a new petition for a change, or they can amend it on the floor of town meeting. But because people have signed that petition as written, once they've signed it, it's been submitted and certified, that document, or that language is what the language is.
And what's the deadline for them if they did want to submit additional petitions?
I believe it's the 21st.
Okay.
All right. 1 second here, Ms. Roy. Mr. Clark, you had your hand up, I think, a couple of times. I just want to.
Yeah, no, I my question was answered. I was just wondering when the deadline would be if we were to amend and redo the signatures.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the board? Ms. Roy?
It's not really a question. It's more of a comment that if you guys are able to, I would strongly suggest getting two more petitions and introduce them separately, because they are going to have separate conversations. One's going to have a financial impact. One's going to, and they're all going to be very emotional. And you just do yourself a favor by having them separate.
Okay.
Mr. Fazio, and then Mr. Clark will come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of echo what Ms. Roy just said, I agree. I think there are people in this community who are open to, we've had a Eurocentric approach to history all this time. And so now what we're doing is being more inclusive in our community and the history of our town. But there's this financial piece to it that I think that even if people want to do that, they're going to perhaps vote no, just because of the finances of the town. So if you're prepared for those two arguments and you kind of separate those arguments, you have a better chance of it passing on town meeting floor.
Okay.
Mr. Clark?
So to be clear, if we were to try and separate this into two separate articles, we would have to get those signatures and have them down to town hall by close of business tomorrow.
Yes, if tomorrow is the deadline, right, Mr. Broussard, to have this in, that would be correct. Otherwise, this language goes on for town meeting on the 22nd.
Okay. And if we were
All
to
right,
submit two
all
new
right.
articles, we could withdraw. Sorry,
The
other one.
I'm not sure. Ms. Roy, can you describe to me last year, because you went
Yeah,
through this
so-
pretty intimately, more so than the
So
rest
last
of us?
year, it was just, they just kind of moved over it. They didn't really, there was a couple where they either rescinded or moved over. So it would stay on the warrant, this one, because you did the work. These people still said they want to see it. So this still goes on, but you can just say, let's move over that. We have these ones instead.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Clark and Ms. Feedy, thank you very much for coming in and sharing what your bylaw amendment is about. We appreciate your time. Good luck with it. I think all of us here, especially, what Mr. Prisby said, be prepared on town meeting floor. And, this is what you believe in. This is what town meeting is for. Citizens petitions are to operate outside of your elected officials for this purpose. And I wish you the best of luck on June for town meeting. But thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Can I just tell them one more thing? Because you do not need all of the signatures on one petition. So if you email everybody tonight and have them print out their own and go collect everybody's, you can submit 10 with one signature each. That counts. So good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Helpful.
That helps.
Okay, Abercorn, thank you very much. All right. So next up, we have the street beautification project for Christopher Drive. I was told just a few days ago that Ms. Piscani could not make it in for the meeting, but what she's basically seeking from us tonight after our discussion was to basically plant trees along that Christopher Drive boundary and adhere to the recommendations of our tree warden, of Mr. Knoyer. Wanted to just bring this back to everybody. Is there any questions or comments from the board? All right, I'm not seeing any. So do I have a motion?
What particular wording should I include in the motion to ensure that this homeowner is going to be responsible for the maintenance and the cost and everything else associated with it that we talked about?
That's a good question, Ms. Roy. I'm not sure that you can force someone to maintain the cost of it. I don't know the answer to that one. Mr. Broussard or Mr. Prisby, I'm sorry. Sorry, you had.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. It's just my understanding that the maintenance is not going to be an issue. Cost of initial planting, I think, was the only thing that was contemplated here. So once the trees go up, as with all the other town-owned land that we have that has trees on it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So, but are we paying for the trees? They're paying for the trees, correct? So maintenance, not an issue. It's they're paying for the trees. Okay. What was her name again? So I can include that, I guess. Or unless anybody else has a motion ready to go that can handle all of this.
So Catherine Piscicani, did I get that last name right?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to find, so she did state in her plan, Miss Roy, to plant blue spruce or eastern red cedars recommended by the tree warden. The exact number will depend upon the cost and the space. So there isn't really any. Go ahead, Mr. Broussard.
Excuse me, I apologize. I was a little laggy there, but perhaps the board could just move to approve the street beautification project for Christopher Drive as presented and in coordination and approval by the tree warden. Let Paul deal with it later.
Moved.
Okay.
He's not watching this. I'm in good. I'm safe.
All
Cool.
right.
So
Second
I've got
that.
to handle that one. Okay, I've got, do I have a motion on the table?
Okay, I move the board vote to approve the street beautification project for Christopher Drive as presented by Catherine Piscicani at the homeowner's expense in coordination with the tree warden.
Second.
Motion made and seconded on the motion. Do I hear any discussion on the motion? All right.
Yes, just
Mr.
quickly.
Roy.
So I did ask Mr. Canoio about the maintenance, and his commentary was that anything that they're contemplating planting wouldn't be an issue for several decades. So I don't think that would be a concern.
Mr. Broussard?
Just to clarify that, once they're planted on town property, they are now town property.
Sure.
So that's pretty much it. We own them after that. So maintenance care of, it's all us.
So any trimming, any down limbs on the trees, that becomes the town's responsibility, right, Mr. Broussard?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Prisby,
Aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Moving down here, we have in front of us, basically, one second, pulling mine up, local election warrant. So this is for the charter change and the language that will appear on the ballot based on our town meeting last year when we were changing the strong chief provision. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we entertain a motion? All right, so I'm not seeing anything, so I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the local town election warrant dated May 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Just for urgency purposes, if once this gets voted on tonight, if you could go please sign it down at town hall as soon as possible, please. If there isn't any discussion on the motion, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Frisbee,
Aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried 5-0. Thank you. All right, so next up here, we have on our schedule, we have Eric Schreier to discuss coal tar asphalt ban. Good evening, Eric, and thank you and welcome to the select board meeting. Thank you for making it out tonight. I understand you have a presentation and you want us to share that on the screen.
Sure. Are you capable of sharing that?
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Guess I'll explain how I started to care about this topic in the first place too. Because it was certainly never my intention to start pushing this on an agenda. But my neighbor had his driveway sealed before he moved last year. And it's a large driveway. And my backyard stunk for a long time. So I decided to look into what it was I was smelling. And it didn't seem that benign to me the more I looked into it. So I took these types of driveway sealers. There are many different types, but here are 3 common ones. And you have coal tar, which is used in the Northeast in the Great Lakes area, made from coal. My understanding is it goes back to the days of the Industrial Revolution, having a lot of mills in this area. Coal is used for making steel. So that's why it's used in the Northeast and in the Great Lakes area. Most of the country, the western part of the United States, the South, they use asphalt-based sealers. This is the same stuff that your driveway is made of. You basically put more asphalt on top of the driveway to protect it. Then you have polymer sealers. These are higher end, more expensive. So not a complete list, but kind of the common ones. So then I threw in an article from USA Today. This goes back to 2013, but I think it does a pretty good job of giving an overview of the topic. It presents both sides. It discusses how the state of Minnesota, the state of Washington, DC, San Antonio, Austin, Texas, a lot of places have banned this coal tar-based driveway sealant. Home Depot and Lowe's won't sell it anymore either. In Massachusetts, the town of Sudbury and the town of Westwood have either banned it or they heavily regulate it. Then I go on, I throw something in from the US Geological Survey, which is part of the Department of Interior. That's the federal agency responsible for managing federal land, natural resources. It explains how coal tar has high levels of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs. And the EPA has classified these as probable carcinogens and priority pollutants. These chemicals are found in crude oil and cigarette smoke and even barbecued foods. The problem is the level of PAHs in coal tar blows away what you would find from other sources. So if you go, I think, to the next page or maybe 2 pages down, they say, for instance, a tire has 84 milligrams per kilogram of PAHs. Coal tar sealant has up to 200,000 milligrams per kilogram of these PAHs. Yeah, that's the page there. It kind of gives breakdown. And then the article also says much of the estimated risk of cancer from these things comes from exposure prior to the age of 7. And the last page in the article discusses how runoff from coal tar sealant is toxic to aquatic life. Then I included something from the EPA. It discusses the concerns of coal tar-based seal coating on stormwater runoff. There was one study that showed PAHs in stormwater in a parking lot next to a that was sealed with coal tar-based sealant. Had 65 times more PAHs than a parking lot that didn't have this coal tar-based sealant. The article also cites a study showing that coal tar seal coat is the largest source of PAHs in urban lakes. So I spoke to the Conservation Commission, Grafton Conservation Commission, about this. And if you scroll down a little bit more, Leah Cameron said, "We agree that this is bad. We think it could be regulated under the illicit discharge bylaw, which you see here. And the objective of this bylaw is basically to prevent pollutants from entering the town's sewer system. This is the path that Westwood used to effectively ban coal tar-based sealant. Massachusetts introduced a bill to ban this a few years ago. I spoke to somebody who works in the sealant industry. He thinks lobbyists got involved, and that was the end of that. You know, and there are two sides to this, I understand. The coal tar sealant, it does a better job at resisting stains, oil-based stains. I spoke to another person who works in this industry. He said he used to use asphalt-based sealant, but he went back to coal tar because the asphalt sealant is fine if you have a driveway that hasn't been sealed before. But once a driveway's been sealed with coal tar, if you try and throw asphalt-based sealant on top of it, it doesn't adhere very well. So, you know, I know there are two sides to it. By my way of thinking, though, this is something people don't really know about, something worth discussing. I think it's something worth bringing to the attention of the Grafton Conservation Commission and the Select Board. So that's what I'm trying to do.
All
I'd
right.
be happy to take any questions if I'm able to answer them.
Thank you very much, Eric, for coming in. So yeah, first question up, I see Ms. Roy, if you want to go ahead.
So my first question would be, how in other communities that have implemented this, how was it enforceable? How would you know if somebody used that? Does it require a permit to get your driveway sealed? I've never sealed a driveway, so I don't know.
No, that's a big problem. It's hard to enforce. I only know of one company in central Massachusetts that uses asphalt-based sealant, and that's just from a Google search, and I called the person and spoke to him. I also spoke to the town of Westwood, and the person in charge of conservation in the town of Westwood was very familiar with this company, which made me think if there is something on the books, word gets out and you start to gravitate toward the environmental solution. I also think since coal tar-based sealant isn't sold in a Home Depot or a Lowe's, these are companies that are doing it. If they're putting down something that's banned and they put it down, you explain to the company, you know, this is not allowed to enter our storm system. This is illegal. There could be fines going forward. I think the companies stop putting it down. So I think those are two routes, but yeah, it's hard from a practical manner. But I guess that would be my hope, is since these are companies that are doing it, you say, you know, this is not allowed in the town of Grafton, and word spreads, and hopefully the companies can use asphalt-based and charge a premium and nobody gets put out of a job.
All right, thank you. Mr. Prisby.
Yeah, I guess this question is to Evan, and I'm not sure if you would know at this point if our DPW uses PAH-based sealant in any of its projects.
I have no idea, to be quite honest with you. I will get that answer and follow back up with the board.
Okay.
If I, Mr. DeFazio.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Schreier, for that presentation. He had called me about a year ago, has been working on this for a while now. So, and I know, went through conservation and got their opinion, and I appreciate the effort. And I just want to know, what is the action of the board tonight, or what is the expectation, I should say, Mr. Schreier, of from you of the board tonight, because that's not clear to me.
My hope would be somebody who has more credentials than me. You know, somebody who has a public health degree or works with the EPA or for the EPA, or there's a Central Mass Regional Public Health Alliance, comprises 7 towns, Worcester and Grafton are included, or somebody from the Grafton Conservation Commission. You know, somebody who has more credentials than me could maybe bring this up at a town meeting, and, you know, maybe somebody from the industry. Maybe both sides are presented rather, the town can vote. I really don't know. Like, I don't know if the board has the ability to say, hey, we think this should be regulated and banned, or if it has to go through a town vote. You know, but I think the best way to do it would be to have this understood, debated by the town. I don't know if that's the proper avenue or not. Not really. It's my first foray into local politics, so I don't know.
Well,
Good so far.
welcome.
Real quick, so I know for a bylaw change that goes in front of town meeting, Eric, and that you can do so by, you know, gathering 10 signatures like the last sponsors were to changing the personnel bylaw. But if you're asking the board to, you know, put something on the warrant, you know, and have it done for tomorrow, I think that's a bit, you know, not enough time. Personally, I'd like to
No, I'm asking for years from now,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think you know, looking at something more in the fall town meeting to maybe consider, but I just my general thoughts. But Mr. Prisby, you had your hand up. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I think I was following along those same lines. You know, we did something similar with the plastic bags in Grafton, and there was an advocacy group that came in, and I think Doreen, you could probably speak to this too, spoke to conservation, put together a warrant article, got it on the warrant, and then voted it up and down at town meeting. That's generally how these things go. I will say, you know, when I heard about this, and I frankly, to be honest with you, hadn't heard about this issue. Very familiar with coal tar sealant. You know, my grandfather used to throw it down in his driveway, and I liked the smell when I was a kid. But now, you know, this is going back a number of years now. A lot of state agencies, and I'm looking at news articles from the middle of the last decade, saying that there are safer alternatives that are cheaper and don't come with the cancer risk and the pollutant risk that this particular stuff does. And there's really no reason to use it anymore. So, you know, I'm supportive. I think you just have to go through the process of getting something on the warrant, getting it to be a bylaw, getting some support from the appropriate committees, and going from there.
Well, if somebody can walk me through the process offline, I'd be happy to hear it. You know,
Absolutely.
I've researched stocks all day. I don't know how to go about putting something on.
And I don't mean to
This
put
is-
it on you either, you know, it's just that if you, frankly, I think if you leave it with us, it might get lost in the shuffle of all the stuff that we have to go through. So it's always helpful to have volunteers, which is why we appreciate our volunteers. It's always helpful to have somebody who is dedicated to a cause, pushing that one cause along through a little bit of bureaucracy that we do have here. And I appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I was going to say, Eric, you know, you've got members here who have put things on the town meeting warrant before through citizens petitions. I would work through the various boards, especially with conservation, about what language would look like. And, you know, go to the clerk's office. If you call the clerk's office, they will walk you through and guide you on how to put a citizens petition together. That's a service for anyone here in Grafton, not just, you know, elected officials, but that's what they're here to serve for you. So the town clerk's office would be my first resource. But I think to, you know, Mr. Prisby's point, you know, and, you know, what you're asking for us tonight, you know, is when something comes back with how that language would look like, and there's some analysis that's done, you know, Grafton does a fair amount of chip sealing. I'm not sure it uses coal tar sealing, but, you know, again, I'm assuming Mr. Broussard couldn't answer that. That would be something that we would need to know, because moving forward, the town itself, when it does its chip seal, when it puts its surfactant down for the adhesion of the chip seal to the road, we would need to make sure that it's, you know, not something that is that's being banned too. But yeah, the clerk's office is where I would start first. And I would work with some of the other various boards about what that language would look like in the bylaw. I think conservation would be a great place to go and elicit their feedback.
Okay,
Mr. Fazio and then Mr. Often.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more follow-up question, Mr. Schreier. How did you leave it with the Conservation Commission? I know that our Conservation Director wrote a letter, but was there any follow-up with them as well?
no, the commission voted in support of writing a letter to the select board. You know, they have concerns about it too, but did not think that it fell under their jurisdiction when it comes to being able to do anything. So that's why Leah Cameron suggested I talk to the select board. She was of the opinion, if I'm quoting her correctly, that the select board had the power to change the bylaws and regulate this. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but that was the impression I had.
I'm sorry, Mr. Prasad, did you want to follow up to that before I go to Mr. Often and Ms. Roy?
Yes, so yes, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Often. So there's a number of different ways that this can be gone about, right? There's as I stated before, there's the MGL 39 section 10, which is the resident petition route, which is, you know, probably unattainable for this particular warrant round. However, as a resident of Grafton who's affected by a bylaw or proposed bylaw change under MGL 40A section 5, if I'm not mistaken, the petitioner, in this case, Mr. Schreier, would ask the Board of Selectmen to consider a bylaw change by amending our stormwater provision, which would then get sent over to the, I believe in this case, it's going to be planning board to review that document and recommend yay or nay on that. So there are two different routes that can go. One starts with you and one starts with a petition.
Okay, so if I did MGL 40A section 5,
Correct.
how do I go about that?
So if the board's not going to take action on this evening, then I would say the way to do that is to call me, and I can help you with 40A section 5.
Okay,
Because we're government and it is very confusing. But I can certainly help you navigate that approach too, as well as the petition route. Either way, I can certainly assist you in that, to that end.
okay. I'll follow up. Thank you.
Mr. Often, did you have a question?
I just had a comment as well, thinking about action that you could be taking more immediately. If conservation did have legitimate concerns, they might be willing to, put out some information to the public to help consumers of, driveway sealants make informed decisions on this. I went through and looked at the USGS information actually before you had presented it, and it's pretty compelling. But I also read a lot of the commentary that was on the peer-reviewed articles, and you can really go pretty far down a rabbit hole trying to figure out who's motivated by what and what the real story and risks are and all of that. So they're probably better placed to put that type of information out, but that's something that you could certainly have a discussion with them, or even the Regional Health Alliance about, to see if you can just educate the public to do something more immediately to help consumers be informed on the matter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Anyone else had their hand up earlier that I missed? Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Schreier, thank you for coming in and explaining and asking questions. Feel free to reach out to us when you get to a point and you want to come back to the select board and when you have some language in there. Thank you, Mr. Broussard, Mr. Schreier, as well for walking him through all of the municipal maze of making changes to bylaws. But we appreciate you coming in tonight. I don't think there's any further questions. Have a great evening, and we will, I'm sure we'll circle back here in a short while.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. All right. All right. Just pick there up where I left off. So we have up here a zoning board of appeals. The reason for this is we've had the motion misstated for the wrong years for the appointment that we had at our last meeting. So I would ask if the board would go ahead and just reread the appointment for the ZBA with the corrected dates for the terms.
I move the board vote to extend the appointment of Matali Biswas on the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate member to June 30th, 2023.
Motion made and seconded for the appointment. Any questions? All right, seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Prisby?
Yeah.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. All right, we don't have any appointments for town administrator. New business tonight, we're bringing back the recycling committee charge. I know last time we were talking about, changing from someone from the select board or include a select board representative or their delegate was added to the committee charge, and we updated it. So does anyone have any questions regarding the updated charge? Okay, not seeing anything, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to accept the waste reduction and recycling committee charge as presented as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion on the committee charge? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Prisby?
Yeah.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I. Peter
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. All right, next up, special municipal employee designation for beach supervisor. Mr. Broussard is asking select board to make this designation here tonight. Mr. Broussard, do you want to kind of give some background on this designation tonight?
Yes. So in looking for a municipal, a beach supervisor, as Jen from Park and Rec had mentioned at the last time she was here, it's a difficult position to fill, and one of our employees at the Municipal Center has done this job in the past and would like to potentially do that again for us this summer. And in order to do that, they would have to be that position would have to be designated as a special municipal employee to make that happen.
All right. Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to designate the beach supervisor position as a special municipal employee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded on the designation. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Left and I.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yeah.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, I.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. All right, next up on our agenda, do we have any select board member reports? Okay, so we're gonna move over to TA reports. Evan, do you have an update for us on a few things tonight?
Pardon me, I was trying to get the cough out before I unmuted and blasted all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the three major things that I was going to update the board on tonight is the library building project is ongoing. I know that they've done their furniture selections. We spent some time this week working on a phone system because we want to make sure that their phone system jives with what the town will have to do to update the municipal center. So we did spend quite a bit of time on that this week. And otherwise, the project appears to be remaining on time and on budget. So that's great. The Upton Street RFP, or the former DPW garage, as it's also commonly known. There is a hiccup with that RFP in that the RFP mentions 17 and 27 Upton. That is on both sides of the middle property. But the town meeting warrant only authorizes the town to take action on 27. So we will need another article on this town meeting warrant to authorize 17 Upton to be included in with 27.
Is 17 the old dairy barn?
Correct.
Okay.
So we did only receive one RFP response, which included that property.
Yep.
However, we subsequently discovered that that was not included in the original article for whatever reason. And I'm not sure what that is.
All right, Ms. Roy?
So I remember having a conversation with the previous town administrator about that specifically, and he said that the DPW uses that building. So he was going to try to negotiate that somehow, just so you're aware.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But municipal employees are hoarders, so we can probably, fix that. No, I don't know what's in there, to be honest with you. I have cleaned out my share of municipal offices though, so people do like to hold on to stuff. So we'll have to figure that out. But at any rate, we do have to go back with 17. And then lastly, we got our initial round of responses on the Millbury Street sidewalk grant. Millbury Street sidewalk project. The grant is what it is. And all of those quotes came in, or those bids came in much higher than anticipated. And so Mr. Carlson and Mr. Brian and I will be having a conversation about where to go as far as the bid process goes, and then maybe bring that back in front of you folks for further review.
So just so the board knows, my purpose of just following along in that conversation is just to work with Mr. Broussard on what the board needs to decide at that meeting when it happens. And I believe that's Milford Road, not Millbury Street.
Yes,
Mr. Broussard, I knew you were gonna.
I think I did that in my email too.
Yep.
Yes.
My role just there is just, making sure we know what we have coming to the meeting. I'm not making any decision on behalf of the board or anything
Right.
for that discussion. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Broussard on that? What we should probably add there, Evan, just for updates, is just probably next one down, just add Milford Street sidewalk, as well, going forward.
Yeah, so that I stop calling it Millbury Street. Yeah, I agree.
It's all good. All right, any questions? No, okay. Next up, we had some correspondence come through. Does any board member have any questions on that? Ms. Roy?
So I just wanted to address the sign on Depot Street and Providence Street that Ann Basawaski emailed us about. Do we know if anybody reached out to her to explain how sign bylaws work or gave her an answer?
I haven't heard of anything, Ms. Roy, that came across myself personally, but I think we can have Mr. Broussard reach out and get back to us on that.
I want to say that that was taken care of, and that my office did respond to that, but let me double check and circle back with you. But it's my recollection that we did have a follow-up on that.
Okay. Mr. Prisby.
Yeah, we got correspondence from Ron Warwick on Worcester Street concerning the use of the property at 25 Worcester Street. I'm not sure why there's confusion about this. We've dealt with any number of concerns that have come into us about the use of 25 Worcester Street, but nothing has changed since last town meeting. The intent is to use the land at 25 Worcester Street for a 55 and older development for affordable housing. I think there are some people that are seeing the words 55 plus development and affordable housing development, seeing those things separately. I'm not sure why that's happening, but it appears to be happening. I know that when the Affordable Housing Trust did a presentation last week, it ran through 4 different ideas of what the land could be used for. In the 4 slides that it used, 2 of them said affordable housing and then 2 of them didn't, because whoever was putting the slide together didn't include the words affordable housing, and people got concerned about that. Like, well, why are some of these affordable and some are not? All of them are going to be affordable housing developments. The number of units that are included in those developments for affordable housing will be approximately 25%. We don't know how many total units there will be, because we don't know how many total units will be going into the development itself, because we haven't made that determination yet. Again, I urge people a certain degree of patience here. I will say that we're getting to a tipping point here with people kind of reading things online that aren't necessarily true and making assumptions about people's motives. And we're getting to the character assassination phase, which always happens, and I'm fine. I'll say I've gotten death threats this year, so I'm cool with it. Like, this is like low key compared to what I usually get, which is fine. But we're getting to that point already. So I just want to encourage people to relax. We're moving through the ideas as they come into us. We are bound by the rules of open meeting law, so there's nothing that we can't discuss offline. So all of our ideas, good or bad, are vetted through the committee process. And if you don't understand things, please email us, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to go through them with people. But we are getting a lot of sort of panicked correspondence to the trust and to the board. And I think the other day to the Grafton Commons. So again, I encourage people to be part of the process. There's going to be plenty of time for the vetting of public ideas.
Any other questions or comments on the correspondence that we received? Something that we will have to address at a future meeting is Mr. Nelson's letter to us with regards to weed infestation control efforts. I know a couple of years ago we had to address this, so we have to provide some input and some support, I think, on this issue. If the board has no objections, we can put this on a future agenda item, maybe invite Mr. Nelson in here to discuss this a little bit further with us. Anyone from the board have any other thoughts on moving forward with that? Okay. All right. Okay, we are done with the discussion tonight. I wanted to bring back from last week, safety measures for tents and parking lots. And it wasn't 100% clear to me last week. I know some of us had mentioned talking about the broader issues. Some of us are talking about the immediate issues of safety. So I wanted to bring this back tonight just for the board to have its discussion and talk about this in its generalities, and assist myself and Evan about what next steps that the board would like to take going forward with regards to safety measures, with regards to tents and parking lots. So I want to open it up to discussion. I know, just based on some of the commentary last week, talking about protecting people, who are sitting right next to parking spots and, outside dining and other events too, I think this could play into. But anyway, wanted to open this up to the board, get a feel for you, what should be the next steps, do we want to see, and get the general consensus of the board and how to move forward. Because I think this is there's a near-term discussion and then there's a long-term discussion around this. And I just want to get some direction from the board tonight. So anyone would like to have the floor first? Who would like to go? Ms. Roy.
So when it comes to this, I know we're just kind of limited to giving out entertainment licenses, and then there's a small component to that incorporates public safety. What I thought we were going to be talking about was having a department like planning or police or fire inspector come in and give us some guidance onto their thinking, why they said these situations were safe versus, unsafe. What are their mechanisms that they're measuring this by? And I know last year was kind of an anomaly. So they were rushed to make these decisions. They approved plans that they might not otherwise have. And we've had a whole year to kind of bake on this and improve that. And I just want to make sure that it is improving. And it's not just, well, we did it last year, so we're going to do it this year. And because we do want to keep this going long term. So I don't want it to be a situation where we wait till next year and it's like, well, it's been fine for 2 years. Why is it a problem now? So just that big overall conversation, as well as the immediate concern of if any certain parking lot is unsafe, what are some things that we can do to protect, our residents?
All right. Anyone else have any other questions or discussion? Mr. Fazio?
Sorry, just trying to get myself off mute here. So another avenue we could take instead of having them in for discussion. Sorry, that's just my dog with a toy now because I let her in the room. We could ask planning board and maybe the fire inspector to review their procedures and before we meet, and then see if there's any updates that we could make, thinking that this is perhaps a long-term, like Ms. Roy said, this isn't just for a pandemic, but this is something that our residents enjoy and we want to look at long-term. And could we request from them to go over their procedures, hear our concerns, and maybe come back to us with any changes or their reasons why they're not changing them. And so that way we're not reinventing the wheel by having them in, us making a list of procedures. Because if I think of it from the business owner's perspective, I'm thinking like, I don't want another set of hoops for business owners to have to jump through, like, okay, the fire inspector, the planning board, now the select board has a list of rules. It's like, I would rather work with the people who are putting together those procedures, such as planning board, and having them go over and review why they're not making changes, and if they're comfortable with things as they are, or if they're thinking of it in terms of long term, are there changes that they would make?
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any more further discussion? Mr. Frisbee.
What's our goal here right now?
We're having discussion with regards to safety measures for tents and parking lots. So basically, comes back from last week with the use of the parking lots to extend, indoor business, usually businesses that were indoors to outdoors, and reviewing, just what determination did other boards or committees or inspectors use to determine level of efficacy and safety? That's what I'm getting at.
Left the barn though, hasn't it? We just approved one. And suppose we come to a different determination when Cancun's comes in or when Wong's comes in. Those are both establishments that have active parking lots around the eatery. Are we going to come to a different determination for them?
I don't know, Mr. Prisby. I don't know the answer to that question. Mr. Austin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for my part, I trust the judgment of the departments that are reviewing the site plans, going on site, discussing with the owners to make their determinations. And I trust staff in the determinations that they're making. I think on my end, the discussion is about, we have had at least one business indicate that this is a long-term concern for them, that they want to adjust their business model. So I go to, what happens next year when the businesses go to, to planning and say, okay, we're going to do the same thing that we did last year, but now this is permanent. So, that's more my concern. Is I'd like some understanding of what that change of use process is going to look like, and what additional criteria they would be looking at in terms of a permanent outdoor dining experience and that site plan review and whatnot. And frankly, I don't know, our planning board is mature and they have a lot of, seasoned members on the board that have been through this a couple of times already. So I don't know that there's much for us. I think this is principally a planning board issue for when the business comes and says, we're going to operate in a very different way permanently.
Ms. Roy, then Mr. Prisby.
So I think we all trust staff. I don't think anybody, that's not an issue of what's being discussed here, but it is something that we're just an extra set of eyes. So while these entertainment licenses come before us, we might be looking at it and seeing something that planning or whoever might have been looking at it through a different set of eyes. So for me, it's more of having a better understanding of what are the levers that are getting pulled to ensure that everybody is doing it as safe as possible, and to ensure that it wasn't just, we slapped it together last year and we're just following the same playbook because it worked. I just want to know, and I don't think that has anything to do with trust at all.
Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Colleen. I don't understand why we're trying so hard to avoid the responsibility that's ours under the statute here. We are the granting authority for the application that someone is seeking. It's not the planning board. It's not the fire department. It's not the police department. It's not the Board of Health. It's us. And we have to be comfortable with the safety regulations put in place. I'm not trying to insert my opinion over somebody else's, but I got to be honest. I've been in this town a kind of a while, and I've seen how these things work, and I understand the pressure that some people like to put on particular departments to get things done. And I'm not completely comfortable without an explanation for something that I think is entirely obvious, which is the safety of somebody sitting in a folding chair in a parking lot while traffic comes and goes. Completely obvious, like mind-numbingly obvious. So when I have questions about that, I would like them answered, and I would like them answered by somebody who was in the decision-making position from the fire department to say, look, we looked at this and it was fine because the planters that are out in front of those tents are actually crash-rated planters that are designed to stop vehicles from going into a tent. If I heard that, I don't even know that we'd be having this conversation right now, but we didn't. And so now I'm in a position where, okay, we're going to talk about the policy, but we've already let one of these go. And we'll let one of these go for, a business whose owner used to sit on this board And now we're going to make a determination for other businesses coming forward, what we're going to do for them. I'm not sure how you square that circle. Like, I want to have the conversation, and I want to have it with people who know something about what they're talking about, which is honestly not the people in this group right now. So I don't know what we're trying to accomplish with this conversation. I would prefer to talk to the fire department or the police department and have this conversation with them about what they think is necessary and why reunion was okay. And if what they think is necessary is, yes, those are crash rated planters, and we are going to recommend them to you for passage of other establishments that have parking lots with patrons eating in them, then I'm fine. Otherwise, it's starting to sound kind of random, which is when I start getting nervous.
All right. All right, Mr. Fazio.
Thank you. So I think, Mr. Prisby, to sort of follow up on that, I think what makes this conversation maybe a little bit confusing is that some board members are comfortable with things as they are, and so it's clear that some board members aren't. And so, so we're, the question is, where do we go from here, right? Because we kind of have a split board on people who are okay with just passing things as they are, and others that have more concern. So, I mean, I guess if I was in your position and I wasn't comfortable with it, I would contact the planning board or contact the police chief and say, can you explain this to me? And so I don't know, is it necessary for us to have everybody at a meeting to discuss it and change it? Is my question. And if the answer is yes, then that's fine. That's your opinion. But I just, for me, I mean, I'm comfortable moving forward, asking those questions, getting answers, and being comfortable with it. And so my suggestion was, if we're not comfortable with it, do we go back to these departments and say, yeah, there's some concern from some select board members. So can you review what your policies are and explain them to us? So I guess we can go either way. We can have everybody in here and have a discussion, or, is that the solution? Just to have another meeting with people and hear, at a public meeting that, yes, this is comfortable with you, or is a phone call enough? And I guess this goes to Ms. Roy too. I don't know. Mr. Often said how he felt. I don't know how Mr. Carlson felt, but I mean, that's sort of where we're at, is we're making a decision here with a split board. So we have to come to a determination of how to make the two members who aren't comfortable with this comfortable with it. And I don't know if a phone call would suffice.
Ms. Roy?
So just to respond to that, I think, yeah, sure, I can call anybody, but how does that help anybody else on the board to know how that conversation went? And if the board is split, like you say, what does it hurt to have the conversation here so that everybody in May, so hopefully, you never know how that person could feel too. Oh no, am I breaking up? Anyway, it says my internet's unstable, but the point is, it's like you said, a split board, and I don't think one private phone call between one person is helpful.
Ms. Roy,
Is
you
that
froze up
better?
there for just 1 second. I just wanted to let you know.
Justin turned on the microwave.
I got the gist of your response.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? So I'm sorry, Mr. Frisbee.
Yeah, no, and I agree with Colleen. It's just a point that I tried to make again over the years. Phone calls are fine, but the problem with phone calls is it doesn't give the public the benefit of the discussion. And I just so happened to be in Cancun's, I think it was like the night before the last meeting, and there was an employee from Long's there as well. And both were talking about restrictions and how business was going and how government could make it a little bit easier. And one of them, and I can't remember which one, told me that, yeah, they were told there was a requirement for barriers between them and the parking lot. And I hadn't heard that before. And I got a little bit concerned that, there are some people being told one thing and some people being told another thing. And for the benefit of the larger business community, especially if this is something that we're going to pursue, we have to balance public safety and public wants, and also just general fairness and making sure everybody's on the same page. And again, I don't mean to be cynical, but there is something to be said for people going on the record in a live meeting saying, this is what we're telling people, this is what the expectations are. And as soon as everybody in town knows that, the more likely that everyone's going to be following those expectations. We just had a vote on Christopher Drive trees. And, you know, we had that initial discussion and the trees were so controversial, we put that discussion over for a week. So, you know, I don't feel like calling people back for another meeting is that much of an ordeal. Everybody here is involved in town. Everybody knows what the expectations are. Sometimes you're called for a meeting. This is important. And I don't mean to be safety dad here, but really, it's traffic in a parking lot where you're sitting and eating, where there are drinks being served. I don't mean to be dramatic about it, but I got called out as being a tool online this week for voicing a concern. Okay, so I'm going to stick with it and kind of insist that, yeah, this is a discussion we should have publicly.
So you once, if I may, Mr. Fazio, I would like to just have the floor for just one moment. So, Mr. Crispy, you brought up a great point about the barrier part. And I remember last year we asked the question about what was required for, you know, extending the chief allowing entities to serve alcohol outside of their physical premise. And it was, and I recall the word barrier, but I want to confirm this. So I do agree with you. Like, I do want to ask that question, but I want to confirm that that was a requirement from the chief, that there be some sort of barrier. But we, you know, to your point, it was to keep people out, not to keep cars out. But again, that was over a year ago when we did this, right? But when you mentioned it, it made me think about, you know, who made the determination that there had to be a barrier on the, you know, for them. And I believe it was, if you were serving alcoholic beverages, it was the same thing we have down at the flea market. And this was before I was on the board. I remember watching that liquor pour permit where the chief required that there be a barrier to separate from the general public and the people who are consuming alcoholic beverages. So that way it was just to help police the situation. But I mean, I hear your point on that. And that's something I would want to get clarification on, but that might be an email or a follow up with Mr. Broussard, or we bring in somebody, we bring the chief back in here for a quick discussion on that. But anyway, Mr. Fazio.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up to Ms. Roy and Mr. Prisby. I see clearly both your points, and even though I'm comfortable with it, I think it's a good idea. You've both convinced me that it's a good idea to have a public discussion on this, because this isn't going to go away. And I guess my other question would be, you know, what do we do about reunion? But Mr. Chair, I would like to suggest perhaps our next workshop meeting, this might be an opportunity for the board and maybe planning, the fire inspector, anyone involved in this, to just have an open discussion. So we're not really looking at procedures, but we're just looking at, you know, where do we go from here? Are we all on the same page? And does everybody have their questions answered? And so, and that way we're not going back to businesses. We're not offering these entertainment licenses with a split board all the time. That's unfair. And I can say that if I was on the other side of that and I had questions that I wanted to bring to the public, that I would want to have an open discussion about it too. So.
All right.
That's all.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay. All right. Not seeing any. No one's hands up. That's right. So move on. We've got a couple of meeting minutes to approve tonight. We have March 16th.
Can I do them in one motion? Are you okay with that, everybody?
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay. I move the board vote to accept the meeting minutes from March 16, 2021 and March 30th, 2021 as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 2 sets of meeting minutes. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often I.
Mr. Frisbee. I didn't hear.
Frisbee, aye. Do you hear
Thank
me?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you. Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. All right, just to wrap up here, we don't have a meeting next week. We're scheduled for May 4th. And then we have our workshop scheduled for May 11th, just for future agenda items. Just to recall from our last meeting, we'll have for the board to consider policy change on select board annual appointments to boards and committees in advance of that meeting for the board to review for the May 4th meeting. And then for the workshop, I'll start putting together a working agenda item with a couple of topics here. One of them being just the overall discussion, and I'll work with Mr. Broussard on this on this whole use of outdoors and what this means for Grafton going forward, especially for annual license renewals for what we're engaged with, and then what other boards have to consider moving forward for the use of outdoors. So if anyone has anything else, feel free to reach out and contact me for the 4th or the 11th, and we'll start
Mr.
putting
Chair?
it together. Mr. Often, yes.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Frisbee, if I could just ask that you attend the executive session on the 4th. I'm going to have some meeting minutes for discussions on that we had over the summer that you'll be needed to approve.
Okay. And we'll schedule that before the meeting at 7. Okay. All right. At that point, just want to give everyone a quick update. Thank you very much. I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Motion made and second to adjourn. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often I.
Mr. Frisbee, Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Carlson, I declare, Ed, you voted yes? Oh, he's gone. I declare the motion carried 5-0. All right, guys.